They called her cursed. They spat at her feet and turned their backs when she walked by. For 17 years, Arya Blackwood wore the mark on her skin like a brand of shame, until the night the Alpha King himself walked into her pack's ceremonial hall, looked straight at her, and everything she thought she knew shattered like glass. What they called a curse was actually a royal bloodline thought lost for 3 centuries. And the people who wanted her dead? They'd been hiding the truth all along. Stay with me until the end to see how the girl everyone threw away became the one force powerful enough to bring an entire kingdom to its knees. And if you're hooked already, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Let's go. Arya Blackwood learned early that survival meant making yourself small. Not physically, though at 17 she was lean and wiry, all sharp edges and quiet movement. Small in the way that mattered, invisible, forgettable, the kind of person you could look right through and never remember seeing. She'd perfected it over the years. Keep your head down. Don't speak unless spoken to. Stay out of sight when the pack gathered. Eat after everyone else. Sleep in the cold corner of the servants' quarters, the one with the broken window that let in the winter wind. And above all else, never, ever let anyone see the mark. It sat just below her collarbone, burned into her skin like someone had pressed a hot iron there and held it until the flesh scarred. A symbol she didn't understand. Circular, with lines that curved and intersected in patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. Her mother had died the night Arya was born, and the mark had appeared with her first breath. The pack's healer had taken one look at the newborn covered in blood and bearing that strange symbol, and pronounced her cursed. 17 years later, nothing had changed. Move. Arya didn't look up. She knew that voice. Celeste Marlowe, daughter of the pack's beta, blessed with golden hair and a face that launched 1,000 admirations. Celeste didn't need to raise her voice. When she spoke, people listened. Arya stepped aside, pressing herself against the stone wall of the corridor. She'd been carrying linens to the guest chambers. The Alpha King was visiting, which meant the entire pack house had been in chaos for days. Every surface scrubbed, every room prepared, every wolf on their best behavior. Everyone except Arya, of course. She was still cursed, still untouchable. Celeste swept past without another glance, trailed by 2 other she-wolves who giggled at something Arya couldn't hear. She waited until their footsteps faded before continuing down the hallway. The guest wing was almost ready. Arya had spent the morning helping the other Omegas prepare the rooms, though helping mostly meant doing the work no one else wanted. Scrubbing floors, beating rugs, hauling water. She didn't mind. Work meant purpose, even if that purpose was temporary. She pushed open the door to the last chamber and froze. Someone was already inside. An older woman, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, stood by the window examining the curtains. She wore traveling clothes, expensive ones, Arya noted, made of fabric too fine for anyone in their pack to afford. A visitor, then, part of the Alpha King's entourage. I'm sorry, Arya stammered, already backing toward the door. I didn't know anyone was... You're the cursed one. It wasn't a question. Arya's hand flew to her collarbone instinctively, even though the mark was hidden beneath her shirt. The woman's eyes followed the movement. They talk about you, the stranger continued, turning from the window. The girl with the devil's mark. The one who killed her mother. Arya's throat tightened. She'd heard it all before, every variation of the story, each one worse than the last. Some said her mother had made a deal with dark forces. Others claimed Arya herself was a demon wearing human skin. The truth, that her mother had simply died in childbirth, as women sometimes did, was never enough. People needed explanations. They needed someone to blame. I should go, Arya said quietly. Show me. What? The woman crossed the room in 3 strides. She moved like a wolf, fluid, predatory, completely sure of herself. The mark. Show me. Every instinct screamed at Arya to run. She'd spent her entire life hiding the symbol, keeping it covered, pretending it didn't exist. The one time she'd been foolish enough to let it show, she'd been 8, swimming in the creek with the other children. The pack had dragged her before the Alpha and demanded she be exiled. Only her father's intervention had saved her, and he'd paid for it with his position, his pride, everything he had. I can't, Arya whispered. Can't or won't. It's forbidden. I'm not supposed to. The woman's hand shot out, gripping Arya's wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to make it clear this wasn't a request. Child, she said, and her voice had gone soft, almost gentle. I have traveled 300 miles with the Alpha King. I have seen things that would turn your hair white, and I am telling you, show me the mark. Something in her tone made Arya obey. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way the stranger looked at her, not with disgust or fear, but with something else. Something that looked almost like recognition. Slowly, Arya unbuttoned the top of her shirt and pulled the fabric aside. The mark sat there, ugly and raised, the scar tissue slightly darker than her skin. In the afternoon light filtering through the window, it almost seemed to shimmer. The woman inhaled sharply. For a long moment, she said nothing. She just stared at the symbol, her expression unreadable. Then, very carefully, she released Arya's wrist and stepped back. Cover it, she said, and speak of this to no one. I don't understand. You will. The woman moved toward the door, then paused. What's your name? Arya Blackwood. Well, Arya Blackwood. The stranger's smile was sharp as a knife. I suggest you prepare yourself. Your life is about to get very complicated. She left without explaining, and Arya stood alone in the guest chamber, her hands shaking as she buttoned her shirt. The ceremonial hall buzzed with anticipation. Arya watched from the shadows at the back of the room, tucked behind a stone pillar where no one would notice her. She wasn't supposed to be here. Omegas weren't invited to pack ceremonies, and cursed Omegas especially, but she'd been ordered to help with the serving, which meant staying close enough to be useful and far enough away to be forgotten. The Alpha King would arrive any moment. The entire pack had gathered, dressed in their finest clothes, every wolf trying to look their best. Because tonight wasn't just a diplomatic visit. Tonight, the Alpha King would choose his queen. Arya had heard the whispers. King Daemon Silvercrest, ruler of the northern kingdoms, was 28 and unmated. His coronation had been 5 years ago, and the council had been pressuring him to take a queen ever since. So he'd announced a tour of the major packs, promising to select a bride from among the eligible she-wolves. Every unmated female in the pack had been preparing for weeks. New dresses, new jewelry, hair arranged in elaborate styles that must have taken hours. Celeste Marlowe stood at the front of the crowd, radiating confidence in a gown the color of fresh snow. She looked like a queen already. Arya tugged at her own plain dress, the only one she owned that didn't have visible patches. Not that it mattered. No one would look at her tonight. The hall doors opened. Silence fell like a physical thing. Every head turned. Every breath held. The Alpha King walked in, and Arya understood immediately why people spoke his name with reverence. He was tall, taller than any wolf she'd ever seen, with shoulders broad enough to block out the sun. Dark hair, cut short. A face that might have been handsome if not for the scar that ran from his temple to his jaw, pulling one side of his mouth into a permanent, almost sneer. He wore black, simple, and unadorned, with a silver chain around his neck that caught the torchlight. Power rolled off him in waves. Not the kind you demanded, the kind you earned. Behind him walked his entourage, warriors in formal dress, advisors with careful expressions, and Arya's breath caught, the silver-haired woman from earlier. She walked at the king's right hand, her eyes scanning the crowd with the precision of a hunting hawk. Alpha King Daemon, her pack's alpha, Marcus Thornwood, stepped forward, his voice booming through the hall. We are honored by your presence. Daemon's nod was slight, almost dismissive. Alpha Marcus, your hospitality is appreciated. The formalities continued. Greetings, introductions, the kind of political theater Arya had seen a dozen times before. She let her attention drift, cataloging the exits, counting the seconds until she could disappear back to the kitchens. Then the silver-haired woman leaned close to the king and whispered something. Daemon's head turned sharply. His eyes swept the crowd, moving past the eager faces at the front, past the anxious parents pushing their daughters forward. His gaze traveled deeper into the room, cutting through the shadows like he could see in the dark. And then he looked directly at Arya. She froze. Every muscle locked. It felt like being pinned by a predator. The moment before the strike, when prey knows it's been spotted and running is already too late. The king's eyes narrowed. You, he said, and his voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Step forward. The hall went dead silent. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. He couldn't mean her. It was impossible. There were dozens of beautiful, eligible she-wolves in this room. He couldn't. Now. It wasn't a request. Her legs moved before her brain caught up. She stepped out from behind the pillar, every eye in the room turning to watch. She could feel their shock, their confusion. Whispers started immediately. The Cursed One? Why would he? Someone stop her. Alpha Marcus stepped forward, his expression tight. Your Majesty, I apologize. This girl is not. She shouldn't be here. She's not eligible for. I didn't ask if she was eligible, Daemon said, still looking at Arya. I asked her to step forward. Arya walked. Each step felt like wading through deep water. The crowd parted around her, creating a path she never wanted to walk. Celeste's face was white with fury. Other she-wolves looked equally stunned, their carefully prepared smiles cracking. She stopped 3 feet from the Alpha King and dropped into a clumsy curtsy, her eyes on the floor. Look at me. She raised her head slowly. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, not just his size, but the weight of his presence. This was a wolf who'd killed to take his throne and killed more to keep it. Everyone knew the stories. What's your name? He asked. Arya Blackwood, Your Majesty. How old are you? 17. His eyes moved to her collarbone, the place where her mark sat, hidden beneath fabric. Show me, he said quietly. The room erupted. Your Majesty, I must protest. That girl is cursed. She bears the devil's mark. Silence. Daemon didn't shout. He didn't need to. The single word cracked through the hall like thunder, and every voice cut off mid-sentence. He looked back at Arya, waiting. Her hands trembled as she reached for the collar of her dress. This was insane. This was suicide. Showing the mark publicly had been forbidden since she was old enough to understand what the word meant. If she did this, there would be no taking it back. But the Alpha King had given her a direct command, and something in his eyes, some strange certainty, made her believe he already knew what he would find. She pulled the fabric aside. The mark gleamed in the torchlight, raised and dark against her pale skin. Someone gasped. Then another. The silver-haired woman moved closer, her sharp features alive with something that looked like triumph. Impossible, Alpha Marcus breathed. Daemon reached out slowly, giving Arya time to pull away if she wanted. When she didn't move, his fingers traced the edge of the mark, not touching her skin, just following the pattern in the air above it. The crown of the first Luna, he said, and his voice carried to every corner of the silent hall. The royal bloodline, lost for 300 years. Arya's vision swam. What? This isn't a curse. Daemon's hand dropped. He looked at Alpha Marcus, and his expression could have frozen fire. This is the mark of the original royal family, the lineage that united the Pax before the Great Betrayal, the blood that was supposed to have been wiped out. That's impossible, Marcus said again. The royal line died out centuries ago. Everyone knows the lie they were told. The silver-haired woman spoke for the first time, her voice ringing with authority. I am Vera Nightshade, keeper of the archives. I have spent 40 years studying the old bloodlines, and I am telling you, this girl carries the mark of the first Luna. There is no mistaking it. Arya couldn't breathe. The room tilted around her. This had to be a mistake, some terrible joke. She was nobody, less than nobody. The cursed girl who scrubbed floors and kept her head down and tried desperately not to exist too loudly. She couldn't be. Which means, Daemon continued, his eyes still on Marcus, that someone in your pack has been lying for a very long time, because this mark doesn't appear randomly. It passes through blood, which means Arya's mother, or her father, was royal. Her father is Thomas Blackwood, Marcus said quickly. A common wolf, no special lineage. And her mother died in childbirth. We don't even know. Then I suggest you find out. Daemon's smile was cold, because this changes everything. He turned back to Arya, and his expression softened slightly. Do you know anything about your mother's family? Arya shook her head. Her voice came out as barely a whisper. She died when I was born. My father never talked about her. Where is your father now? Dead, 2 years ago. Something flickered across Daemon's face. regret, maybe, or recognition. I'm sorry. I don't understand what's happening, Arya managed. I know. He glanced at Vera, then back at Arya. But I promise you this, we're going to figure it out, and no one is going to hurt you, not while you're under my protection. Your protection? Marcus's voice rose. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this girl has been declared cursed by our pack. She's dangerous. She's a royal heir, Daemon cut him off. And if anyone in this room has a problem with that, they can take it up with me personally. The threat hung in the air, sharp and unmistakable. No one spoke. Daemon looked at Arya again. Do you have belongings you need to collect? What? You're coming with me. Tonight. We leave for the capital in 1 hour. Arya's mind went blank. Leave? With the Alpha King? To the capital? I can't just… You can. His voice was firm, but not unkind. And you will, because staying here isn't safe anymore. You understand that, don't you? She did. The moment he'd revealed the truth about her mark, everything had changed. The people who'd spent 17 years calling her cursed would now see her as something else, something threatening, a reminder that they'd been wrong, or worse, that they'd been lied to. 1 hour, Daemon repeated. Vera will help you pack. He turned and strode from the hall, his entourage following like a wake behind a ship. The crowd parted for them, still too stunned to react. Arya stood alone in the center of the room, her mark exposed, her entire world cracking apart. Vera appeared at her elbow. Come, child, we don't have much time. I don't understand, Arya said again. I know, but you will. Vera's hand on her arm was surprisingly gentle. Trust me, this is the beginning of your real story. Arya's belongings fit in a single pack. One spare dress, a comb, a knife her father had given her years ago, its blade worn from use and sharpening, a small wooden carving of a wolf that she'd made as a child. That was it, 17 years of life, and it all fit in a bag she could carry with one hand. Is that everything? Vera asked. Arya nodded. They stood in the tiny room she'd shared with 3 other Omegas, none of whom were present, probably avoiding her. That was fine. She'd gotten used to being avoided. Then let's go. The packhouse was chaos. Wolves running everywhere, voices raised in argument. Arya caught fragments as she and Vera moved through the corridors. Can't just take her. The king's authority. What if she really is royal? 300 years. How is that even possible? They made it outside without being stopped. The king's convoy was already assembled. Horses, wagons, guards in formation. Daemon stood near the lead carriage, speaking quietly with one of his warriors. He looked up as Arya approached. Ready? I don't know, she admitted. Something like approval crossed his face. Honest. Good. Come on. He helped her into the carriage, his hand steady when she stumbled on the step, and climbed in after her. Vera settled across from them, and a moment later the convoy lurched into motion. Arya looked back at the packhouse, the only home she'd ever known, a place that had never wanted her. She didn't feel sad to leave it behind. You're quiet, Daemon observed. I'm trying to understand. Arya turned from the window. If this mark is really from some royal bloodline, why didn't anyone recognize it? Why did they call it a curse? Because 300 years ago, Vera said, someone went to great lengths to make sure no one would recognize it, to make sure anyone who bore this mark would be hunted down and killed. Why? Power. Daemon's expression was grim. The first Luna united the packs. She created the alliance that brought peace to the kingdoms, but after she died, her heirs were systematically murdered. Every single one, as far as anyone knew. It was the Great Betrayal, a coup that wiped out the royal line and replaced it with the council system we have now. But if they killed everyone, someone survived. Vera leaned forward. Someone escaped and went into hiding, changed their name, hid the mark, and eventually, that someone's bloodline led to you. Arya's head spun. This is insane. It is, Daemon agreed, but it's also true. I've seen the old records. Vera showed them to me years ago when we first started looking for signs of the lost bloodline. Your mark is identical to the ones described in the texts. There's no question. So what happens now? Now? Damon smiled, but there was no humor in it. Now you come to the capital. You learn about your heritage. You train, and you survive. Survive what? The people who wanted your bloodline dead 3 centuries ago. His eyes were hard. They're still out there, and when they find out you exist, they're going to come for you. Arya felt cold despite the warmth of the carriage. How do you know? Because they came for me. Damon touched the scar on his face absently. When I took the throne 5 years ago, I started asking questions about the great betrayal, started looking into what really happened, and someone tried very hard to make sure I stopped asking. This scar was a warning. But you didn't stop. No, I didn't. He looked at her directly. And neither will you, because like it or not, Arya Blackwood, you're not cursed. You're the last heir to the most powerful bloodline in our history. And that makes you either the most dangerous thing in this kingdom or the most hunted, Vera finished quietly. Arya looked down at her hands. They were shaking. I'm not powerful, she said. I'm nobody. I scrub floors and carry water and try not to be noticed. I don't know anything about politics or fighting or being royal. Then you'll learn, Damon said simply. You're stronger than you think. You've survived 17 years in a pack that wanted you dead. That takes more strength than most wolves ever need. I survived by being invisible. And now you can't be. His voice was firm. So you adapt, you learn, you become what you need to be. The carriage hit a rut, jolting them all. Outside, Arya could hear the guards calling to each other, the horses' hooves on the road. What if I can't? She whispered. Damon was quiet for a moment. Then you die. And the people who killed your ancestors win, and the truth stays buried for another 300 years. It should have sounded harsh, cruel even. Instead, it sounded honest. Arya took a deep breath, then another. Her whole life she'd been told she was cursed, told she was worthless, told the best thing she could do was disappear. Maybe it was time to stop believing that. Okay, she said. Okay. I'll learn. I'll try. She met Damon's eyes. I'll survive. For the first time since she'd met him, the Alpha King smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. Good, he said. Because trust me, Arya Blackwood, your story is just beginning. The carriage rolled on through the night, carrying her toward a future she couldn't imagine and a past she'd never known existed. And somewhere in the darkness behind them, in the pack she'd left behind, wolves began to whisper. The cursed one was gone. But curses, they said, had a way of coming back. The capital city of Silver Peak rose from the mountains like a crown of stone and steel. Arya pressed her face to the carriage window, watching the walls grow larger as they approached. She'd never seen anything like it. Towers that scraped the sky, buildings stacked on top of each other, streets that twisted and climbed the rocky slopes like veins. Even from a distance, she could hear the noise, voices, wheels, the constant hum of thousands of lives packed into one place. Overwhelming, isn't it? Vera said. Arya nodded, not trusting her voice. The journey from her pack had taken 3 days, and each mile had felt like traveling into a different world. The forest had given way to farmland, then villages, then towns, each one larger than the last. And now this, a city that made everything she'd known feel impossibly small. How many people live here? She asked. 50,000, give or take. Damon shifted in his seat across from her. He'd been quiet most of the journey, reading reports and speaking in low tones with his advisors. More during festival seasons. 50,000. Arya's entire pack had barely numbered 300. The carriage passed through the outer gates, and suddenly they were inside the city proper. The streets pressed in on all sides, vendors selling food she didn't recognize, children darting between carts, wolves in fine clothes who stopped to stare as the royal convoy passed. The smell hit her, smoke and spices and too many bodies in too little space. They're looking at me, Arya said quietly. They're looking at the king's carriage, Vera corrected. They don't know who you are yet. Yet. The word hung in the air like a threat. The palace sat at the city's highest point, carved from the same gray stone as the mountains. Its walls were thick enough to withstand a siege, its gates reinforced with iron. Guards in silver armor stood at attention as the convoy approached, their eyes tracking every movement. Arya had thought her old packhouse was impressive. This made it look like a shack. The carriage stopped in a courtyard large enough to hold her entire former pack. Daemon stepped out first, then offered Arya his hand. She took it, trying not to stumble as her legs remembered how to work after 3 days of sitting. "Welcome to Silver Peak Palace," he said. Before Arya could respond, a door across the courtyard burst open and a woman strode out. She was tall, blonde, beautiful in a way that made Arya immediately aware of her own travel-stained dress and tangled hair. The woman's eyes locked on Daemon, then shifted to Arya, and her perfect face went cold. "So it's true," she said. "You actually brought her." "Lady Helena." Daemon's voice was carefully neutral. "I didn't expect to see you in the courtyard. I was waiting for you." Helena's smile was sharp. "When I heard you'd found some girl with a mark and decided she was the lost royal heir, I thought surely it was a joke. But here she is. How quaint." Arya felt her face heat. She knew dismissal when she heard it. "Lady Helena serves on the council," Vera said quietly to Arya. "Her family has held power in Silver Peak for generations. How nice for them," Arya muttered. Helena's eyes snapped to her. "Did you say something?" "I said it's nice to meet you," Arya lied, keeping her voice flat. For a moment, Helena just stared. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, this is going to be entertaining. Tell me, Your Majesty, where exactly do you plan to keep your little project? Surely not in the royal wing." "Arya will have quarters appropriate to her station," Daemon said coldly. "Her station?" Helena's eyebrows rose. "She's an Omega from a backwater pack. What station could she possibly—" "She carries the mark of the First Luna." Daemon's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Which makes her station considerably higher than yours, Lady Helena. I suggest you remember that." The courtyard went silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Helena's smile froze. "Of course, Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect." "Didn't you?" Daemon turned away from her. "Vera, please show Arya to her rooms. I'll meet with the council in an hour." "Wait," Helena's voice stopped them. "The council will want to verify the mark. You understand that, don't you? We can't just take your word that she's who you claim. There are procedures." "Then follow them, Daemon said without looking back. "But choose your next words carefully, Lady Helena. I'm in a generous mood today. Tomorrow, I might not be." He walked away, leaving Helena standing in the courtyard with fury written across her perfect face. Vera touched Arya's elbow. "Come, quickly." They hurried into the palace, through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Servants pressed themselves against walls as they passed. Some stared, others whispered. Arya kept her eyes forward and tried to ignore the feeling of being hunted. "That woman hates me," she said when they were finally alone in a stairwell. "That woman hates everyone," Vera corrected. "But yes, she'll hate you especially. Her family has been positioning her to become queen for years. And then you appeared. I'm not trying to become queen. Doesn't matter, you're a threat to her plans. That's enough." Vera paused on a landing, breathing hard. "Listen to me, child. The capital isn't like your old pack. Here, knives come with smiles attached. You need to be careful who you trust." "Should I trust you?" Vera's laugh was unexpected. "Smart question. Yes, you can trust me. I served the true royal line before the betrayal. I've spent my entire life trying to find the lost bloodline. You're the answer to 40 years of searching. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Even the Alpha King? Daemon is—" Vera hesitated. "Complicated. But he's not your enemy. He wants the truth as badly as I do. Just remember, he's a king first. That means he'll do what's necessary for the kingdom, even if it costs him personally." They reached the top of the stairs and entered a hallway lined with doors. Vera stopped at one near the end and pushed it open. "Your rooms," she said. Arya stepped inside and stopped. The chamber was larger than the entire servants' quarters back home. A massive bed dominated one wall, draped in dark blue fabric. Windows looked out over the city. A fireplace, already lit. Furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. "This is a mistake," Arya said. "I can't. I don't belong in a place like this." "You belong wherever you choose to be." Vera crossed to a wardrobe and opened it. "Fresh clothes. They should fit well enough. There's a bathing room through that door, and servants will bring food shortly. Rest tonight. Tomorrow the real work begins." "What real work?" "Proving you're who we say you are." Vera's expression was serious. "The council won't accept you on Damon's word alone. They'll want tests, demonstrations, proof of your bloodline." "How do I prove something I don't understand myself?" "We'll figure it out." Vera moved toward the door. "But Arya, whatever happens, don't let them see fear. The moment they think you're weak, they'll tear you apart." She left, and Arya was alone in rooms that felt like a cage made of silk and luxury. She walked to the window and looked out over Silver Peak. Somewhere in that sprawling city were 50,000 wolves, and most of them would probably want her dead once they knew who she was. What she was. Her hand went to her mark, tracing the raised skin through her dress. Cursed or royal, what was the difference, really? Either way, she didn't fit. Either way, she was dangerous just by existing. The knock on the door startled her. "Come in," she called, expecting servants with food. Instead, Damon entered. He'd changed from his travel clothes into something simpler, dark pants, a white shirt, no crown or formal regalia. He looked tired. "I wanted to check on you two," he said. "Make sure you're settling in." "Settling in?" Arya almost laughed. "I'm in a room that costs more than my entire pack earned in a year. I just met a council member who wants me dead. And tomorrow, apparently, I have to prove I'm royalty when I don't even know what that means. So no, I'm not settling in." Damon's mouth twitched. "Fair enough. Why are you really doing this?" Arya turned to face him fully. "You don't know me. You have no reason to believe I'm who Vera says I am. So why bring me here? Why risk your position for someone like me?" "Someone like you," he repeated. "You mean someone brave enough to survive 17 years in hell?" "I wasn't brave. I was just trying not to die." "Same thing." He crossed to the window and stood beside her. "You want the truth? I'm doing this because the great betrayal was exactly that. A betrayal. Someone murdered the rightful royal family and replaced them with a council that's been fighting over scraps of power ever since. I became king because I was strong enough to take the throne, not because I had any claim to it. And every day, I wonder if I'm just another usurper pretending I deserve to rule." Arya stared at him. She'd expected politics, strategy, not this. "But if the true bloodlines still exist," Damon continued, "if there's someone with an actual right to the throne, then maybe we can fix what was broken 300 years ago. Maybe we can actually unite the packs the way they were meant to be united." "You think I can do that?" Arya's voice cracked. "I can barely tie my own shoes without someone telling me I'm doing it wrong." "I think you're stronger than you know." He looked at her. "I think you've been told your whole life that you're worthless, and you believed it because what else could you do? But now you're here, and you have a choice. You can keep believing the lies, or you can become who you were always meant to be. And if I fail, then you fail." His honesty was brutal, but at least you'll fail trying. That's more than most people ever do. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the city lights were beginning to glow as evening settled in. "The council meeting tomorrow," Arya said finally. "What happens?" "They'll ask you questions, examine the mark, probably try to intimidate you." Damon shrugged. "Lady Helena will push hardest. She sees you as competition." "For what? I don't want to be queen." "Doesn't matter what you want. You're a threat to the power structure just by existing." He paused. "Can you defend yourself?" "With my fists? Barely. I never trained. Omegas weren't allowed." "Then we'll fix that too." Damon moved toward the door. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow we find out if the council accepts you, or if they try to destroy you." "That's comforting." His smile was grim. "I didn't say it would be easy. I said it would be worth it." After he left, Arya stood at the window for a long time, watching the city settle into night. Somewhere out there, wolves were living normal lives, working, eating, sleeping without wondering if tomorrow would bring triumph or execution. She envied them. But the council chamber felt designed to make people feel small. It was circular, with seats arranged in rising tiers so that the council members looked down on whoever stood in the center. The ceiling soared overhead, painted with images of ancient battles and long-dead kings. Every surface was marble or dark wood, polished to a mirror shine. Arya stood in the center of the circle, acutely aware that every eye in the room was fixed on her. There were 12 council members. She recognized Lady Helena, who sat near the front with a smile like poisoned honey. The others were strangers, older wolves in expensive clothes, their expressions ranging from curious to openly hostile. Daemon sat apart from the council, in a chair that wasn't quite a throne but close enough. Vera stood beside him, her sharp eyes tracking every movement in the room. "Let's begin," said an older male wolf with silver threading through his dark hair. "I am Council Head Marcus Grayson. You claim to be the last surviving heir of the First Luna's bloodline. Is that correct?" "I don't claim anything," Arya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm just telling you what the mark means, according to people who know more than I do." "How convenient," Helena murmured. Several council members chuckled. Grayson raised a hand for silence. "The mark. Show it to us." Arya had worn a dress with a low neckline, anticipating this. She pulled the fabric aside, exposing the raised symbol on her collarbone. The council leaned forward as one, squinting at the mark from their elevated seats. "It could be a fake," one woman said. "A brand made to look like the old symbols." "I've examined it closely," Vera said. "It's not a brand. The tissue structure is wrong for that. This mark formed naturally, likely at birth." "Or it's a very good fake," Helena countered. "Surely you're not suggesting we overturn centuries of understanding based on a scar." "I'm suggesting," Vera's voice was sharp, "that you look at the evidence with open eyes instead of closed minds." "Evidence?" Another council member, a younger male with a sneer, laughed. "All we have is a girl from nowhere with a mark that might mean something. Where's her lineage? Her family history? Any proof beyond this? Symbol?" "Her mother died in childbirth," Daemon said, "and her father is dead. But the mark doesn't lie." "The mark is circumstantial," Grayson said. "We need more. What about abilities? The old texts say the royal bloodline could sense other wolves' emotions. Can you do that, girl?" Arya's stomach dropped. No, I don't think so." "You don't think so?" Helena's eyebrows rose. "Shouldn't you know?" "I've never tried," Arya said, frustration bleeding into her voice. "I spent my entire life being told I was cursed. Nobody taught me anything about royal bloodlines or special abilities." "How tragic," Helena said sweetly. But surely if you truly carried royal blood, some instinct would have manifested, some sign of power." "Maybe it did." Arya met her eyes. "Maybe I survived 17 years in a pack that wanted me dead because I'm stronger than I look." "Or maybe you're just a clever fraud," the sneering council member said. "It wouldn't be the first time someone tried to claim royal heritage for personal gain." "What gain?" Arya's voice rose. "I didn't ask to come here. I didn't ask for any of this. I was perfectly happy being invisible and forgotten. You people dragged me into this, and now you're angry that I don't fit your expectations?" "Mind your tone," Grayson warned. "You're addressing the council." "I'm addressing people who've already decided they don't believe me." Arya's hands clenched into fists. "So why am I even here? Why waste everyone's time with this farce?" The chamber erupted. Council members shouted over each other. Helena's smile widened. Daemon leaned forward in his chair, his expression unreadable. "Enough!" Grayson's voice cut through the noise. "This is getting us nowhere. I propose we conduct the old trial." Silence fell. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. "The old trial hasn't been used in over a century," Vera said slowly. "It's considered archaic, dangerous." "But accurate," Grayson countered. "If this girl truly carries royal blood, she'll pass. If she's a fraud, we'll know definitively." "What is the old trial?" Arya asked. Nobody answered immediately. Then Helena spoke, her voice dripping with false concern. "It's a test of worthiness," she said. 3 challenges designed to prove royal heritage. They test strength, wisdom, and will. Many who've attempted them have died. "Many?" Arya repeated. "Most," Helena corrected, smile widening. Arya looked at Daemon. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the chair arms. When he spoke, his voice was controlled but angry. "The old trial is excessive. There are other ways." "Are there?" Grayson interrupted. "You ask us to accept this girl as royal based on a mark and your word. But your majesty, with all due respect, you stand to gain significantly from a royal heir's support. We need objective proof." "The trials could kill her," Daemon said flatly. "Then she's not strong enough to be royal," another council member said. "The old bloodline didn't produce weaklings. If she can't survive the trials, she was never the heir to begin with." Arya's pulse hammered in her ears. Die in the trials, or be branded a fraud and probably executed anyway. Some choice. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. Every head turned toward her. "Arya, you don't have to—" Vera started. "Yes, I do." Arya's voice was steadier than she felt. "Because they're right. A mark isn't proof. And I can't expect anyone to believe me based on faith alone. So fine. Give me your trials. If I pass, you accept that I'm who Vera says I am. And if I fail, if you fail, you're dead," Helena said helpfully. "Then I'm dead." Arya lifted her chin. "But at least we'll know." Grayson studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Very well. The council accepts your proposal. The old trial will commence in 3 days' time. That gives you time to prepare, though I doubt it will be enough." 3 days? Daemon's voice was sharp. "That's not nearly it." 3 days, Grayson repeated. "Or we can simply declare her a fraud now and be done with it." The threat was clear. Daemon's hands tightened on the chair, but he didn't argue further. "This meeting is concluded," Grayson announced. "Prepare yourself, girl. The trials have broken stronger wolves than you." The council filed out, some looking satisfied, others troubled. Helena paused as she passed Arya. "I almost feel sorry for you," she said quietly. "Almost." Then she was gone, leaving Arya alone in the center of the chamber with Daemon and Vera. "That was stupid," Daemon said, standing. "Incredibly, dangerously stupid." "What was I supposed to do?" Arya shot back. "They weren't going to believe me otherwise. So you volunteer for trials that have killed trained warriors?" His voice rose. "You can't even fight properly." "Then teach me." Arya stepped toward him. "You said I was stronger than I knew. You said I could become who I was meant to be. So help me. We have 3 days. Make them count." Vera looked between them, something like respect in her eyes. "The girl has a point." "The girl is going to get herself killed," Daemon said, but his anger was fading into something else. Concern, maybe, or fear. "Maybe," Arya agreed, "but at least I'll die trying. Isn't that what you told me yesterday? That failing while trying is better than never trying at all?" He stared at her. Then, despite everything, he laughed, short and sharp. "You're using my own words against me. Is it working?" "Unfortunately." He ran a hand through his hair. "Fine. 3 days. We train from dawn until you can't stand. But Arya, the trials aren't just about fighting. They're designed to break your mind as much as your body. You need to be ready for anything." "I've survived 17 years of psychological torture," Arya said. "I think I can handle 3 challenges." "We'll see." Daemon headed for the door. "Meet me in the training yard at dawn, and wear something you don't mind destroying." After he left, Vera put a hand on Arya's shoulder. "That was brave, possibly insane, but brave." "I didn't have a choice." "We always have choices. You made the hard one." Vera's grip tightened. "Now you just have to survive it." Dawn came too early and too cold. Arya stood in the training yard, wearing pants and a shirt that some servant had left in her room. Her breath fogged in the morning air. Around her, the yard sprawled empty, just dirt, weapons racks, and training dummies that had seen better days. Daemon appeared like a shadow, dressed for combat. Behind him came 2 others, a massive male wolf with scars crisscrossing his arms, and a lean female with calculating eyes. This is Garrett and Sienna, Damon said without preamble. They're going to help train you. Garrett handles combat. Sienna handles everything else. Everything else? Arya asked. Sienna's smile was predatory. Mental challenges, poisons, traps, the fun stuff. 3 days isn't enough, Garrett rumbled. His voice sounded like grinding stone. Not even close. Then we work with what we have. Damon tossed Arya a wooden practice sword. Let's see what you can do. What followed was the most brutal morning of Arya's life. Garrett moved like water despite his size, and within seconds, he had Arya on her back in the dirt. He pulled her up, showed her the mistake, and knocked her down again. And again, and again. You're too slow, Kiss, he said after the 7th fall. Stop thinking. React. I'm trying. Trying gets you killed. He came at her again. This time, Arya managed to block one strike before the second sent her sprawling. Better, Garrett said. Again. By midday, Arya's entire body was one massive bruise. Sienna took over, dragging her to a different section of the yard where various objects sat arranged on a table. The trials will include puzzles, Sienna explained. Riddles, traps designed to confuse. You need to learn to think through pain and fear. She handed Arya a small box covered in symbols. Open it. Arya examined the box. The symbols seemed random at first, but after a moment, she noticed a pattern. They repeated in groups of 3. It's a sequence, she said slowly, pressing the symbols in order. The box clicked open. Inside was a slip of paper with a single word, decoy. What is that? Pain exploded in her shoulder. Arya spun to find Sienna holding a small dart. The box was a distraction, Sienna said calmly. While you were focused on it, I could have killed you 3 times. Lesson 1, never assume the obvious threat is the real one. You shot me! With a training dart, the trials will use real weapons. Sienna plucked the dart from Arya's shoulder. Again, and this time, watch your surroundings. The afternoon was more of the same. Puzzles that hid traps, traps that hid puzzles, questions with no right answers. Arya failed more than she succeeded, each failure marked by another dart or some other small humiliation. By evening, she was exhausted, bleeding from a dozen minor cuts, and ready to collapse. Damon met her as she limped back toward the palace. How was day 1? Terrible, Arya said honestly. I'm going to die in these trials. Probably. He fell into step beside her. But at least you lasted the full day of training. That's more than I expected. Is that supposed to be encouraging? It's supposed to be honest. He paused at the palace entrance. Arya, you don't have to do this. We could find another way. No, we couldn't. She looked at him. They'd never accept me otherwise, and She trailed off, trying to find the words. I need to know if I can do this. Not for them. For me. Something shifted in Damon's expression. Then I'll do everything I can to help you survive. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be worse. He wasn't lying. Day 2 made day 1 look like a gentle warm-up. Garrett pushed her harder, introducing real blades. Arya collected new cuts to go with the old ones. Sienna's tests grew more complex. The penalties for failure more severe. You're improving, Sienna said that evening, which was probably the closest thing to a compliment she'd give. I don't feel like I'm improving. You're not dead yet. That's improvement. Day 3 arrived with terrifying speed. This was it, the last day of training before the trials began. Garrett worked her until she could barely lift the practice sword. Then he worked her harder. The first trial is combat, he said during a brief rest. You'll face an opponent chosen by the council, probably someone designed to destroy you quickly. Great, Arya panted. Any advice? Don't die. He pulled her to her feet. And remember, you don't have to win. You just have to survive long enough to prove you're worthy. How long is that? However long it takes. He grinned, showing teeth. Again. That night, Arya collapsed in her rooms, too tired to even remove her training clothes. Every muscle screamed. Her hands were wrapped in bandages to cover the blisters. Tomorrow, she would either prove herself or die trying. She was almost asleep when the knock came. Come in, she called weakly. Vera entered, carrying a small wooden box. I brought you something. She opened the box to reveal a thin silver chain with a pendant, a circle with the same pattern as Arya's mark. It belonged to the last confirmed heir of the royal line, Vera said softly. She wore it the day she was murdered. I've kept it safe for 40 years, waiting for the right person. I can't take this, Arya whispered. You can. You must. Vera fastened the chain around Arya's neck. Tomorrow, when you stand in that arena, remember, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for everyone who came before you, everyone who died to keep this bloodline alive. That's a lot of pressure. You can handle it. Vera's smile was sad. You've handled worse. After she left, Arya touched the pendant, feeling the cool metal against her skin. Somewhere in the city below, 50,000 wolves slept, unaware that tomorrow a girl from nowhere would either validate 3 centuries of history or die in the attempt. Arya closed her eyes and tried not to think about which outcome was more likely. Tomorrow would tell the story. One way or another, the truth would come out. And somewhere in the darkness, enemies she didn't even know existed were already planning her destruction, because a living heir to the true bloodline was more dangerous than any weapon, any army, any throne. She just had to survive long enough to become one. The arena filled before dawn. Arya heard them from her holding chamber beneath the stands, thousands of voices blending into a roar that shook the stone walls. They'd come to watch her fail, or die. Probably both. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Drink this, Vera said, pressing a cup into Arya's grip. The liquid inside smelled like burnt herbs and tasted worse, but warmth spread through her chest when she swallowed. It'll steady your nerves. My nerves are the least of my problems. Arya set down the cup and checked her weapons for the 10th time. A short sword, the balance unfamiliar in her hand. A knife strapped to her thigh. Leather armor that fit poorly across her shoulders. 3 days of training against a lifetime of being defenseless. The math didn't look good. The first trial is straightforward, Vera said. You fight until your opponent yields or you're incapacitated. No rules beyond that. Who am I fighting? The council wouldn't say, but expect the worst. A horn blared above them, one long note that cut through the crowd noise like a blade. That's your cue. Vera gripped Arya's shoulders, her eyes fierce. Remember what Garrett taught you. Don't think, react. And whatever happens up there, don't show them fear. The gate groaned open, revealing stairs that climbed toward blinding sunlight. Arya walked up alone. The arena spread before her like an open wound, a circle of sand 50 feet across, ringed by stone seats packed with spectators. Morning light cut harsh shadows across everything. The crowd's roar doubled when they saw her, a wall of sound that hit like a physical blow. Across the arena, another gate opened. The wolf who emerged made Garrett look small. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, muscles layered on muscles, covered in scars that told the story of 100 fights. He carried a battle axe in one hand like it weighed nothing. When he smiled, his teeth were filed to points. "That's Kragan," someone in the crowd shouted. "The Butcher of North Pass." Arya's stomach dropped. She knew that name. Everyone did. Kragan had killed 43 wolves in arena combat. 43. And the council had chosen him to fight a 17-year-old girl with 3 days of training. They really did want her dead. "Begin!" Grayson's voice boomed from the council box. Kragan charged. Arya dove sideways purely on instinct, feeling the axe blade whistle past her head. She rolled, came up running, trying to put distance between them. The crowd jeered. "Stand and fight, girl!" "Coward!" Kragan pivoted faster than something his size should move. The axe came down in a vertical chop that would have split Arya in half if she hadn't thrown herself backward. The blade buried itself in sand inches from her feet. While he yanked it free, Arya lunged forward and slashed with her sword. The blade skittered off his armored forearm, barely scratching the metal. Kragan backhanded her. The world spun. Arya hit the sand hard, tasting blood. Her sword flew from her grip, landing 10 feet away. The crowd roared approval. Through blurred vision, she saw Kragan advancing, axe raised for the killing blow. "Move!" her mind screamed. She rolled left as the axe descended, burying itself where her chest had been a heartbeat earlier. While Cregan wrestled the blade free again, Arya scrambled for her sword. Her fingers closed around the hilt just as boots filled her vision. Cregan's kick caught her in the ribs. Something cracked. Pain exploded through her side, white-hot and nauseating. She curled around it, gasping, unable to breathe. "Stay down," Cregan growled. "Make it easier." The axe rose again. Arya's hand found the knife at her thigh, drew it, threw it in one desperate motion. The blade sank into Cregan's shoulder, right where his armor plates didn't quite meet. He roared, stumbling back. Not hurt badly, the wound was shallow, but surprised enough to give Arya 3 seconds. She used them, grabbed her sword, pushed to her feet despite ribs that screamed protest, set her stance the way Garrett had drilled into her. "You'll pay for that," Cregan snarled, ripping the knife free. Blood ran down his armor. He came at her again, but this time Arya didn't run. She met him head-on, sword raised, and when the axe swung, she didn't try to block. She dodged inside its arc, too close for the weapon to reach her. Her blade found the gap in his armor at his side. The cut wasn't deep, but it was real. First blood to her. The crowd's roar changed pitch, confusion mixed with excitement. Cregan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "Lucky shot. Try me again, and see." They circled each other. Arya's ribs made every breath agony, but she kept her sword up, her stance solid. Cregan was stronger, bigger, more experienced, but he'd underestimated her once. She could work with that. He feinted left, then swung right. Arya read it, barely, and ducked. The axe passed over her head close enough to ruffle her hair. She twisted, slashing at his leg. Another shallow cut. Another spray of blood. Cregan snarled and switched tactics. Instead of big swings, he started using the axe's reach, jabbing with the haft, trying to batter her guard down through sheer persistence. Arya gave ground, deflecting what she could, taking hits on her armor when she couldn't. Each impact jarred her broken ribs, her vision grayed at the edges. "Boring!" someone in the crowd yelled. "Finish her!" Cregan obliged. He shifted his grip on the axe and swung horizontal, putting his full weight behind it. Arya dropped flat. The axe passed over her and momentum carried Cregan forward, off balance. She drove her sword up through the gap in his armor at his armpit. This time, the blade went deep. Cregan screamed. The axe fell from his hand. He staggered backward, blood pouring from the wound, and went down on one knee. The arena fell silent. Arya stood over him, sword raised, breathing hard through broken ribs. One strike to his neck, and the fight was over. Cregan looked up at her, pain and shock warring in his expression, waiting for the death blow. Arya hesitated. "Kill him?" someone in the council box called. "Finish it." But Cregan wasn't fighting anymore. He was wounded, disarmed, on his knees. Killing him now felt like murder. "Yield," Arya said through gritted teeth. Cregan stared at her. Then, slowly, he lowered his head. "I yield." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half booing, all of them screaming. Arya dropped her sword and collapsed to her knees, gasping. Pain radiated from her ribs with every breath. Her hands were slick with blood, Cregan's and her own, she couldn't tell. Healers rushed into the arena from both gates. Some went to Cregan, others surrounded Arya, their hands glowing faintly as they assessed her injuries. "Cracked ribs," one muttered. "Possible concussion. Minor lacerations." "Can she continue?" That was Grayson's voice. "With healing, possibly. But I'd recommend—" "Heal her," Grayson said flatly. "The second trial begins in 1 hour." 1 hour? Arya's voice was hoarse. I need—" "The old trial doesn't pause for comfort," Grayson said. "You wanted to prove yourself, so prove it." The healers worked quickly, their magic knitting bone and closing wounds. It dulled the worst of the pain but left her feeling hollow, wrung out like wet cloth. They gave her water and food she couldn't taste, then escorted her back to the holding chamber beneath the arena. Vera was waiting. "You won." "Barely." Arya slumped onto a bench. "What's the second trial?" "Wisdom." Vera's expression was grim. "You'll be presented with an impossible choice, something designed to have no good answer. Your task is to navigate it without destroying yourself or others." "That's vague." "That's intentional. The trial is different for everyone." The hour passed too quickly. Arya's body still ached despite the healing, her hands still shook, and the crowd's roar above suggested they were getting impatient for the next spectacle. The horn blew again. This time, when Arya climbed the stairs, she emerged into an arena transformed. The sand had been raked clean of blood. In the center sat a simple wooden table with 2 chairs and a single object, a small locked chest. Lady Helena stood beside the table, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Welcome to the trial of wisdom," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "The rules are simple. Inside this chest is something of great value. To claim it, you must answer 3 riddles. Answer correctly, and you advance. Answer incorrectly." She gestured to the far side of the arena. Arya's blood went cold. A cage had been wheeled into view. Inside, bound and gagged, was a young girl, maybe 12 years old, thin and terrified. "Who is that?" Arya demanded. "A thief from the lower city," Helena said dismissively. "Caught stealing bread. She faces execution anyway, but if you fail the trial, she dies immediately. If you succeed, she goes free." "That's insane. Those are the rules." Helena sat in one chair and gestured to the other. "Shall we begin?" Arya looked at the girl in the cage, at Helena's cruel smile, at the crowd watching with eager eyes. This whole thing was designed to break her, make her responsible for an innocent life while answering questions she probably couldn't solve. She sat down. "First riddle," Helena said. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but come alive with fears. What am I?" Arya's mind raced. Something without form that lives in fear. An echo. Helena's smile faltered slightly. "Correct. Second riddle, the more you take, the more you leave behind. What is it?" This was easier. Footsteps. 2 council members exchanged surprised glances. Helena's expression tightened. "Third riddle," she said, and her voice had gone cold. "A mother has 3 daughters. She loves them equally, but can only save one from drowning. The other 2 will die. Which does she choose, and why?" Silence fell across the arena. Arya stared at Helena. This wasn't a riddle. It was a trap. "There's no right answer," Arya said slowly. "Then choose wrong." Helena smiled. "The girl dies either way if you can't respond." The crowd murmured. Some sounded uncomfortable, others excited. Arya looked at the girl in the cage, at Helena, at the locked chest that probably contained nothing of value anyway. "No," she said. "No." Helena's eyebrows rose. "That's not an answer. It's the only answer." Arya stood. "You're asking me to decide who deserves to live based on impossible circumstances, to participate in a rigged choice designed to make me feel like any outcome is my fault. But the real answer is that no mother should have to make that choice. The real answer is that the scenario itself is wrong." "That's not how the trial works." "Then the trial is broken." Arya's voice rang across the arena. "You want to test my wisdom? Fine. Here it is. Wisdom isn't about solving impossible puzzles. It's about recognizing when the game itself is corrupt and refusing to play." She walked to the cage and grabbed the bars. They were locked, but old and poorly maintained. With effort, she wrenched the door open, rusted metal shrieking. The girl inside stared at her with wide eyes. Arya removed the gag. "Run. But I'll be executed." "Not if they can't catch you." Arya turned to face the stunned crowd. "Anyone who tries to stop her answers to me." The girl hesitated one more second, then bolted. She was small and fast, weaving through the crowd toward the exit. A few guards moved to intercept, but Damon's voice cut through the chaos. "Let her go." The guards froze. The girl disappeared into the city beyond the arena. Helena shot to her feet, face twisted with fury. "She broke the trial rules. She should be disqualified." "She showed mercy and courage," Damon said from the council box, "which seems more valuable than solving riddles." Grayson looked between them, his expression unreadable. Then, "The girl demonstrated wisdom by recognizing a false choice and refusing to participate in cruelty. I call the second trial passed." Helena's shriek of outrage was drowned by the crowd's roar, some cheering, some booing, all of them shocked. Arya barely heard it, Her legs gave out and she sat hard on the sand, shaking with adrenaline crash. Vera appeared beside her, helping her stand. That was incredibly stupid. Did it work? Yes, which makes it worse. Vera pulled Arya toward the gate. You just made enemies of everyone who wanted that girl dead, which is half the council. Good, Arya said, though her voice shook. They can get in line behind everyone else. The third trial was scheduled for sunset, 4 hours away. The healers worked on Arya again, though there wasn't much to heal beyond exhaustion. Vera brought food and water. Garrett appeared briefly to grunt approval at her survival so far. The last trial is the hardest, he said. Trial of will. It breaks into your mind, finds your worst fears, and forces you to face them. How do I prepare for that? You don't. His scarred face was serious. You just survive it, or you don't. Not exactly encouraging. Arya spent the remaining hours alone in the holding chamber, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She'd won 2 trials. One more, and she'd proven herself. One more, and the council would have to accept her, unless the third trial killed her first. Sunset painted the sky orange and red when the horn blew. The arena had changed again. The table and cage were gone, replaced by a single chair in the center, ornate, carved with symbols that hurt to look at too long. Wires ran from the chair to some device hidden beneath the sand. Arya's steps slowed as she approached. The trial of will, Grayson announced, tests the strength of your mind and spirit. You will be connected to the Memory Stone, an ancient artifact that pulls forth your deepest fears and forces you to confront them. You must remain conscious and in control for 1 full hour. If you break, if you lose yourself to the visions, you fail. What happens if I fail? The stone has been known to leave people catatonic, trapped in their own nightmares forever. Grayson's voice held no sympathy. Do you accept this trial? Arya looked at the chair, at the waiting device. Every instinct screamed to run. I accept, she heard herself say. 2 attendants helped her into the chair and fastened leather straps around her wrists and ankles. One of them lifted a circlet made of dark metal and placed it on her head. Try to relax, he murmured. Fighting makes it worse. Then he activated the device. Pain exploded through Arya's skull. White-hot lightning that burned away the arena, the crowd, everything. She tried to scream but had no mouth, tried to see but had no eyes. Then the world reformed around her. She stood in the pack house of her childhood, in the corridor outside the Alpha's office. She was 8 years old again, small and terrified because they'd found out she'd shown her mark while swimming. The door opened. Alpha Marcus looked down at her with disgust. Cursed thing, he said. You should never have been born. Young Arya tried to speak, to apologize, but hands grabbed her from behind. Wolves she'd known her whole life, dragging her toward the door, toward exile, toward death in the wilderness. Wait, adult Arya tried to say, but the child's voice came out instead. Please, I didn't mean... You're a blight, her pack members said in unison, their voices blending into one horrible chorus. A disease. You killed your mother. You'll kill us all. They threw her into the forest. Darkness swallowed her whole. The scene shifted. Now she stood in the arena, but it was filled with bodies. Kragan, throat cut. The girl from the cage executed. Garrett, Sienna, Vera, all dead, their blood soaking into the sand. And standing in the center of the carnage was Damon, his eyes cold. This is your fault, he said. I brought you here, believed in you, and you brought death to everyone who helped you. No, Arya choked out. This isn't real, isn't it? He gestured to the bodies. You think you're special? Think you're royal? You're just a cursed girl playing pretend. And now everyone who believed your lie is dead. The scene shifted again. Again. Each vision worse than the last. Her father dying alone because she'd driven him away with her curse. Celeste and the others from her old pack, laughing as they burned her mother's grave. The council voting unanimously to execute her while the crowd cheered. Arya tried to hold on, tried to remember none of it was real, but the visions kept coming, relentless, each one cutting deeper. Time lost meaning. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like years. Somewhere far away, her physical body thrashed against the restraints. Blood ran from her nose. Her heart raced dangerously fast. She's breaking, someone said. Vera's voice. distant and distorted. "Pull her out." "The trial isn't complete, Grayson," Grayson said. "She'll die." Then she dies. In the nightmare, Arya stood in a burning pack house, watching everyone she'd ever known die in the flames, and she couldn't move, couldn't help, could only watch and know it was her fault. "You should have stayed hidden," the fire whispered in her mother's voice. "Should have kept your head down. Should have never tried to be anything." And part of Arya, the part that had believed she was cursed for 17 years, wanted to agree, wanted to give up, let the visions take her, stop fighting a battle she'd never asked for. But another part, smaller but growing, remembered something else, remembered making the choice to come to Silver Peak, to face the trials, to stand up instead of staying invisible. "No," she said to the burning pack house. "You can't fight this," the fire hissed. "I'm not fighting." Arya's voice was steady. "I'm just refusing to believe it." The flames hesitated. "You're not my mother," Arya continued. "You're just fear, just doubt, and I've carried you my whole life, but I don't have to anymore." She walked into the fire. It burned. Every step was agony, but she kept walking, through the flames, through the smoke, through every vision the memory stone could throw at her, and slowly, painfully, the nightmare began to crack. The pack house dissolved. The bodies vanished. The voices faded. Arya opened her eyes. She was back in the chair, gasping, blood running from her nose and ears. The circlet on her head glowed red-hot before going dark. The crowd sat in stunned silence. "How long?" she croaked. 73 minutes, Grayson said quietly. "You passed the threshold 20 minutes ago. Most would have pulled you out, but you kept going." Arya tried to stand and nearly fell. Vera and Garrett caught her, supporting her weight between them. "The trials are complete," Grayson announced to the crowd. "All 3 passed. The council will now deliberate on—" "There's nothing to deliberate." The voice came from the council box, but not from Grayson. An older woman stood, someone Arya hadn't noticed before, small and ancient, her eyes sharp as blades. "Elder Mora," Grayson said, surprise in his voice. "I didn't realize you'd be attending." "I attend all trials of royal blood," Mora said. Her voice was thin but carried perfect authority. "It's tradition. And this girl—" She looked directly at Arya. "This girl carries the mark, passed 3 trials designed to kill trained warriors, and showed mercy when cruelty would have been easier. The council has no choice. She is what she claims to be." "With respect, Elder," Helena stood, "the mark could still be—" "I was there when the last true heir was murdered," Mora cut her off. 307 years ago, I watched them kill the royal family. I saw the marks on their skin before the bodies were burned. And I'm telling you, this girl's mark is identical. She is of the bloodline." The arena erupted in chaos. Council members shouted over each other. The crowd roared arguments. Through it all, Arya swayed on her feet, barely conscious, waiting for the final verdict. Grayson raised his hand for silence. When it finally came, he looked at Arya with something that might have been respect. "Very well," he said. "The council acknowledges Arya Blackwood as the last surviving heir of the First Luna's bloodline. She will be granted full royal status and all rights that entails." The crowd's roar shook the arena foundations. Arya barely heard it. She was too busy trying not to collapse. Vera and Garrett half carried her from the arena through corridors that spun and tilted to a room where healers waited. They laid her on a bed, and their magic flowed over her, mending the worst of the damage. "You did it," Vera whispered. "You actually did it." Arya tried to respond, but darkness pulled her under. She woke hours later in her palace chambers, bandaged and aching but alive. Moonlight streamed through the windows. For a moment, she just lay there, processing that she'd survived. A knock on the door. "Come in," she called, her voice rough. Damon entered, looking exhausted. "You're awake." "Apparently." Arya pushed herself up despite her body's protests. "Is it done? Did the council really—" "You're officially recognized as royal." He moved to the window, looking out over the city. "Which means everything just got a lot more complicated." "How so?" "Because now people know you exist, and the conspiracy that killed your ancestors 300 years ago?" He turned to face her. "They know too." Cold dread settled in Arya's stomach. What do you mean? Someone tried to poison your water during the trials. The healers caught it, but barely. Damon's expression was grim. And that's just the first attempt. There will be others. The people who wanted the royal line dead aren't going to accept that you survived. So what do I do? You learn to fight, really fight, not just in arenas. He crossed to stand beside her bed. And you help me find them before they find you. Do you know who they are? Some of them, maybe. He hesitated. But Arya, they're powerful, connected, probably sitting on the council, maybe in this palace, and they've had 3 centuries to hide their involvement. Then we dig them out. Arya's voice was steadier than she felt. Together. Something shifted in Damon's expression. Together. He left, and Arya lay back down, staring at the ceiling. She'd proven herself royal, survived trials designed to kill her, won recognition from the council, but the real battle was just beginning. Somewhere in Silver Peak, in the shadows of the palace, or the council chambers, or the streets below, the people who'd orchestrated the great betrayal were watching her, planning their next move. And Arya had just made herself the most visible target in the kingdom. She touched the pendant Vera had given her, feeling the mark on her collarbone beneath the bandages. Cursed or royal? Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe she was both. Maybe she'd always been both. The question was whether she could stay alive long enough to figure out which one would win. Outside her window, the city slept on, unaware that the girl from nowhere had just become the most dangerous piece on a board where the game had been rigged for 300 years. And in the council chambers, in a room where no servants were allowed, 3 figures met in darkness. She survived, one said. We underestimated her, another admitted. Then we won't make that mistake again. The third voice was cold. The trials were meant to expose her as a fraud. Instead, they made her a hero. We need a new approach. Kill her outright? Too obvious. The king would know it was us. A pause. No. We need her to destroy herself, to prove she's unworthy without our hands anywhere near the blade. And how do we do that? In the darkness, someone smiled. We give her exactly what she wants. Power, answers, the truth about what really happened to her bloodline. The voice dropped to a whisper. And when she learns what her ancestors really were, what they really did, she'll wish we'd killed her in the arena instead. The archives smelled like old paper and secrets. Arya descended the stone stairs carefully, one hand on the wall for balance. Her ribs still ached from the trials 3 days ago, though the healers insisted she was fully mended. Pain had a way of lingering in memory even after the body forgot. Down here, Vera called from somewhere in the darkness below. The stairwell opened into a vast chamber carved from living rock. Shelves stretched in every direction, packed with scrolls and books and documents that looked old enough to crumble at a touch. A few scattered candles provided the only light, casting dancing shadows across everything. Vera stood at a massive wooden table covered in open texts. I've been searching for 3 days, going through every record from before the betrayal. And, Arya joined her at the table, and I found discrepancies. Vera's finger traced a line of faded text. The official history says the first Luna's family was wiped out completely, every heir killed, every branch of the bloodline severed. But I exist, so obviously someone survived. Yes, but that's not what interests me. Vera pulled over another scroll. What interests me is why the official records are so insistent that everyone died. Most historical accounts would note uncertainty, believed to be dead, no survivors found. This says confirmed eliminated, over and over. Someone wanted to be very sure no one went looking. Exactly. Vera's eyes glinted in the candlelight, which means they knew someone might have escaped, and they wanted to make absolutely certain no one tried to find them. Arya pulled one of the books closer, squinting at the ancient script. The language was old but still readable. What was the first Luna's name? Lyanna Moonwhisper. She united 7 warring packs and created the first real kingdom. By all accounts, she was beloved. When she died, her eldest daughter Selene took the throne. And then, 43 years into Selene's reign, everything burned. Vera's voice dropped. The great betrayal. In a single night, the entire royal family was murdered in their beds. The palace guards, the advisors, everyone loyal to the crown, slaughtered. By morning, the royal line was declared extinct and the council system was established. Who led the betrayal? That's where the records get fuzzy. Vera frowned. 7 council members signed the first governing charter, but their names have been redacted from most historical documents, almost like someone went through later and erased them. Why would anyone do that? Maybe because their descendants are still in power. A new voice spoke from the stairs. Arya spun to find Daemon descending into the archives, Garrett close behind him. Your Majesty, Vera said, I thought you were meeting with the council. I was. It was enlightening. Daemon's expression was grim. 3 members pushed very hard for Arya to be sent away, to a safe location where she could be protected from any threats. Let me guess, Arya said. Lady Helena was one of them, leading the charge. Daemon moved to the table, along with Council Member Thorne and Elder Wexford. They claimed it was for your safety, but they want me isolated where an accident would be easier to arrange, Arya finished. I refused, obviously, which made them even more insistent. He picked up one of the scrolls. They're scared, and scared people are dangerous. Then we need to figure out what they're hiding. Arya looked at the text spread across the table. If we can prove who orchestrated the betrayal, we can expose their descendants. It's been 300 years, Garrett rumbled. Evidence doesn't last that long. Written evidence doesn't, Vera agreed. But there are other kinds. The royal family had a vault beneath the old palace. When it burned, most people assumed everything inside was destroyed. But the vault itself was spelled to be fireproof, waterproof, and sealed against anyone without royal blood. Arya's pulse quickened. You think something survived? I think it's worth investigating. Vera pulled out a map of Silver Peak, pointing to an area beyond the current palace walls. The old palace ruins are here. Most of it collapsed centuries ago, but the foundations remain. If the vault exists and still holds, you'd be the only person alive who could open it. Then we go tonight, Daemon said. Tonight? Arya blinked. Shouldn't we plan this? Bring guards? Guards talk. Plans leak. He met her eyes. If there's evidence in that vault that proves who killed your family, the people responsible will do anything to destroy it. The fewer people who know we're looking, the better our chances. The ruins are in the old quarter, Garrett said. Rough area, lots of places for ambush. Then you'll come with us. Daemon straightened. Vera, you stay here. Keep researching. If we don't return by dawn, assume the worst and take what you've found to Elder Mora. This is dangerous, Vera said quietly. Everything is dangerous now. Arya touched the pendant at her neck. But we're running out of time. If they're already pushing to isolate me, they're planning their next move. We need answers before they can act. 3 hours after sunset, 4 figures moved through Silver Peak's old quarter. The city's oldest section had been abandoned decades ago after a fire that consumed half the buildings. What remained was a maze of crumbling walls and collapsed roofs, home to squatters and thieves and people who preferred to stay invisible. Arya kept close to Daemon as they navigated the rubble-strewn streets. Garrett ranged ahead, silent despite his size. The 4th member of their group was Sienna, who'd appeared at the palace gates with knives hidden in places Arya didn't want to think about. Smells like piss and bad decisions, Sienna muttered. That's Silver Peak for you, Garrett said. The old palace ruins rose against the night sky like broken teeth. 3 centuries of weather had worn the stones smooth, and vegetation grew through cracks in the foundation. But the basic structure still stood, walls thick enough to survive nearly anything, built to last forever by wolves who'd believed their dynasty would do the same. The vault should be in the center, Daemon said, consulting Vera's map, beneath where the throne room used to be. They picked their way through collapsed corridors and rooms that had once held power and glory. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the ceiling, illuminating fragments of mosaics and carvings that hinted at lost grandeur. Here, Garrett said, stopping at what looked like a solid stone floor. On closer inspection, Arya could see the outline of a door, perfectly fitted stones that formed a circle about 6 feet across. At the center was a symbol that made her breath catch. The mark of the first Luna, identical to the one on her collarbone. "How do I open it, yeah?" she asked. "Blood magic." "Probably," Sienna said. "Press your mark to the seal." Arya knelt beside the door and unbuttoned her shirt enough to expose her mark. When she pressed her scarred skin to the cold stone, the symbol flared with sudden light. The door groaned. Stone scraped against stone as the circular section began to sink, revealing stairs that descended into darkness. "Well," Damon said. "That's ominous." They lit torches and descended single file, weapons drawn. The stairs went down at least 50 feet before opening into a chamber that stole Arya's breath. The vault was intact. Completely, impossibly intact. Shelves lined the walls, filled with books and scrolls that looked untouched by time. A large table dominated the center, covered with objects carefully arranged. A crown, several pieces of jewelry, weapons, and what looked like personal effects. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust, but nothing had decayed or rotted. "The preservation spells held," Damon said quietly. "After 300 years, they actually held." Arya approached the table slowly, afraid that touching anything might make it all crumble. The crown was beautiful, silver worked into delicate patterns that caught the torchlight. Beside it sat a journal, bound in leather that was still supple. "Is that—" she started. "Queen Celine's personal diary," Sienna breathed, moving closer. "Look at the seal on the cover." Arya picked up the journal with trembling hands. The leather was cool and smooth, the pages inside still crisp. She opened it to the first entry, written in elegant script. "First day of my reign. Mother's funeral was this morning. I wore the crown she wore, felt the weight she carried. The council swears their loyalty, but I see doubt in their eyes. They think me too young, too soft. They will learn otherwise." "Keep reading," Damon said. Arya flipped through pages chronicling the early years of Celine's rule. Treaties negotiated, disputes settled. The normal business of governing. But as the entries progressed, a pattern emerged. Council member Ravencroft questions every decision. He speaks of traditional values and pack autonomy, but what he really means is that he wants more power for himself and less for the crown. Thorn and his faction grow bolder. They speak openly of limiting the monarchy's authority, of creating a council that rules independently. I remind them that unity comes from a single leader, not 7 voices arguing in circles. I fear there are plots I cannot see, whispers in corridors that fall silent when I approach. Wexford assures me I'm being paranoid, but I trust my instincts. "Thorn," Arya said. "Wexford. Those names are familiar. They're council families that still exist today." Damon's voice was tight. "Thorn and Wexford both have seats on the current council. Direct descendants of the people who questioned Celine's authority." Arya kept reading, the entries growing darker. "They presented me with a charter today, a document that would strip half my powers and grant them to the council. I refused. Ravencroft's face when I burned it, I'll remember that look forever. It was hatred, pure and undisguised. My daughter Alara turned 3 today. She has her grandmother's eyes. I pray she never has to rule in a time like this, with enemies at every door disguised as allies." The final entries were written in a shakier hand, the words pressed hard into the page. "They're coming. I can feel it. The guards who were loyal have been replaced with Ravencroft's people. My food taster died this morning, poison, though they claim it was his heart. I've sent Alara away with my most trusted servant, hidden where the traitors cannot find her. If this is my last entry, if the worst comes to pass, let it be known. I did not go quietly into death, and my bloodline will survive. It must." The page ended there. No more entries. Just blank pages waiting for a future that never came. "She knew," Arya whispered. "She knew they were going to kill her, and she sent her daughter away." "Alara," Sienna said. "The girl who supposedly died with the rest of the family. But if Celine hid her scene," Damon's eyes widened. "Then the entire official history is a lie. Alara survived, and her descendants led to you." Arya set down the journal, her hand shaking. "We need to take this to Elder Mora. This proves that Ravencroft, Thorn, and Wexford's ancestors orchestrated the betrayal. Their descendants won't go down without a fight, Garrett warned. This kind of revelation could tear the council apart. Good, Arya said. It should. A sound from above, footsteps on stone. They all froze. We're not alone, Sienna hissed, drawing her knives. More footsteps. Multiple people descending the stairs. We need to leave, Damon said. Now. But the footsteps were already at the chamber entrance. 6 figures entered, wearing dark clothes and masks. Professional, armed. Well? Said a familiar voice as the lead figure removed her mask. Lady Helena smiled coldly. I had a feeling you'd come here eventually. How did you know? Arya demanded. Please, you think we haven't been watching you since the trials? Helena gestured to her companions. All warriors, all clearly skilled. The moment you started digging into the past, we knew it was only a matter of time before you found this place. We? Damon's hand moved to his sword. The families who built this kingdom after the monarchy fell. Helena's smile widened. Did you really think we'd let you expose 3 centuries of careful work? That we'd allow you to tear down everything our ancestors built? Your ancestors were murderers, Arya said. Our ancestors were visionaries who saw that the monarchy was failing, that one ruler, no matter how powerful, could never truly unite the Pax. Helena took a step forward. They did what was necessary, and now we'll do the same. You're going to kill us and destroy the evidence, Sienna said flatly. We're going to kill you and seal this vault forever. Helena nodded to her warriors. As for the evidence, it will burn, just like the palace did 300 years ago. And the official story will be that the lost heir and her supporters died trying to steal royal artifacts. How tragic. There are 4 of us, Garrett rumbled. 6 of you. Those aren't great odds. For you, maybe. Helena drew a slender blade. But we don't need great odds. We just need you dead. The warriors attacked. Garrett met the first one head-on, his sword clashing against dual axes. Sienna moved like water, her knives finding gaps in armor. Damon engaged 2 opponents at once, his fighting style brutal and efficient. That left 2 warriors and Helena converging on Arya. She drew her sword, the one Garrett had been training her with, and barely blocked the first strike. The warrior was fast, experienced, his blade a blur as he pressed the attack. Arya gave ground, her mind racing. 3 days of training wasn't enough for this. She was outmatched, outskilled, probably about to die. But then something Garrett had said in training came back to her. You don't have to be the best fighter, you just have to be the one still standing. The warrior overextended on a thrust. Arya twisted aside instead of blocking, grabbed his arm, and used his momentum to send him stumbling into his companion. While they collided, she slashed across the first warrior's leg. Not a killing blow, but enough to make him falter. The second warrior recovered quickly, coming at her with an overhead strike that would have split her skull. Arya didn't try to block. She dove forward, under his guard, and drove her blade up through the weak point in his armor at his armpit. He screamed and fell. Helena's eyes widened. You killed him! He was trying to kill me first. Arya's voice was steadier than she felt. The wounded warrior was dragging himself away, leaving a blood trail. The other, Sienna appeared behind him and ended it quickly. Across the chamber, Garrett had disarmed one opponent and knocked another unconscious. Damon stood over 2 more, both down but breathing. That left Helena. She looked around at her defeated warriors, at Arya holding a bloody sword, and something in her expression cracked. This isn't over, she said. You think exposing us will change anything? The council families have held power for 3 centuries. We're woven into every part of this kingdom. You can't just tear us out. Watch me, Arya said. Even if you try, they'll never accept you. Helena's voice turned vicious. You're an Omega from nowhere. A cursed girl playing dress-up in a crown that doesn't fit. The moment you make a real decision, they'll remember what you are and turn on you. Maybe, Arya walked toward her slowly, but I'd rather be a cursed girl trying to do right than a noble who murders children in their sleep. Helena's hand moved to something at her belt. A vial, Arya realized too late. If I can't kill you, Helena said, bringing the vial to her lips, I can at least make sure you never prove anything. She drank. Whatever was in the vial worked fast. Helena's eyes went wide, then vacant. She collapsed, foam at her lips, dead before she hit the ground. Poisons, Sienna said, kneeling beside the body. Quick acting. She chose death over capture. Arya stared at Helena's corpse, feeling numb. We need to secure the others. Get them back to the palace. Already on it, Garrett said, binding the surviving warriors. Daemon moved to Arya's side. Are you hurt? No, maybe. I don't know. She looked at the blood on her sword. I killed someone. In self-defense. He would have killed you. I know. It's just... She took a shaky breath. Everything is happening so fast. I know. His hand on her shoulder was warm. But we have what we need. Helena's presence here, her warriors trying to kill us, that's evidence. Combined with the journal, we can expose the conspiracy. Will the council believe us? Some will, others won't. But it's enough to force a reckoning. He looked at the vault around them. Your ancestor preserved this place for a reason, so the truth wouldn't die with her. They gathered everything they could carry, the journal, documents from the shelves, the crown and royal seals. Evidence of a bloodline that had survived despite 3 centuries of lies. By the time they emerged from the ruins, dawn was breaking over Silver Peak. The city was waking, unaware that the night had changed everything. The council convened an emergency session at midday. Arya stood in the center of the chamber again, but this time she wasn't alone. Daemon stood beside her. Vera was there, holding Celene's journal. Elder Mora sat in the front row, her ancient eyes missing nothing. And bound in chains at the back were Helena's surviving warriors, looking considerably less confident than they had in the vault. This is an outrage, Councilmember Thorne stood, his face red. You cannot bring bound prisoners into these chambers without what? Daemon's voice cut through the protest. Without following proper procedure? The same procedures your family helped write after murdering the royal family? The chamber went silent. That's a serious accusation, Grayson said carefully. It's a fact. Vera stepped forward and placed the journal on the central podium. Queen Celene's personal diary, written in the years leading up to the Great Betrayal. She names the conspirators, Ravencroft, Thorne, Wexford, the same families that hold council seats today. That proves nothing, Wexford said, but his voice wavered. A journal could be forged. The vault it was found in could only be opened by someone with royal blood, Daemon said, and it was preserved by spells that have lasted 300 years. The journal is genuine. Furthermore, Arya added, finding her voice, last night, Lady Helena and 6 warriors attacked us in the vault. They explicitly stated they were there to kill us and destroy the evidence. Lady Helena chose poison over capture, but her warriors survived to testify. She gestured to the bound prisoners. One of them, under Daemon's hard gaze, began to talk. Lady Helena hired us, he said, told us to follow the girl and the king, said they were stealing royal artifacts and we had orders to stop them by any means necessary. Any means, Sienna said from her position against the wall, including murder. The council erupted, arguments flew, accusations and denials crashed together. Elder Mora raised one hand and somehow the chaos quieted. I have lived a very long time, she said, her thin voice carrying to every corner. Long enough to remember when questions about the betrayal were forbidden. When speaking the old queen's name could get you exiled. I always wondered why the council families worked so hard to bury the past. She stood, moving slowly to the podium where the journal lay. Now we know. They weren't just burying history, they were burying murder. Her eyes swept the council. How many of you knew? How many were complicit in this lie? Silence. Then Thorne stood. Even if this is all true, and I'm not admitting anything, it happened 300 years ago. Everyone involved is long dead. You can't hold us responsible for our ancestors' actions. No, Arya said, but we can hold you responsible for continuing those actions, for trying to kill me, for trying to destroy evidence, for perpetuating a lie that's poisoned this kingdom for centuries. The girl makes a fair point, Elder Mora said. The original crime may be ancient, but the cover-up is ongoing. Lady Helena's attack proves that. We need a full investigation, Grayson said. His face was pale. Into the council families, their connections, their actions since Arya's arrival. I'll lead it personally, Elder Mora said, and it will be thorough. Anyone found to have participated in the conspiracy, past or present, will face justice. Thorne and Wexford exchanged panicked glances. Several other council members suddenly looked very uncomfortable. This is a witch hunt, Wexford protested weakly. No, Damon said. This is accountability, something this council hasn't faced in 300 years. The session ended in chaos, with half the council demanding immediate action and the other half trying to delay everything. But the tide had turned. The truth was out, and no amount of political maneuvering could put it back in the vault. That evening, Arya stood on a palace balcony overlooking Silver Peak. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to glow as darkness fell. You did it, Damon said, joining her. Changed everything. We're not done yet. Thorne and Wexford are still free. Who knows how many others are involved? But they're exposed, investigating, running scared. He leaned against the railing. That's more than anyone's accomplished in 3 centuries. Helena died rather than face justice, Arya said quietly. That's how committed they are to keeping power. Then we'll have to be more committed to taking it away. Footsteps behind them. Vera emerged onto the balcony, carrying a small wooden box. I found something else in the vault materials, she said, hidden in the crown's lining. She opened the box to reveal a ring, silver, with a stone that seemed to hold captured moonlight. The first Luna's ring, Vera breathed. It was thought lost forever. What does it do? Arya asked. According to legend, it can only be worn by the true heir. Anyone else who tries. Vera made a gesture that suggested unpleasant consequences. It's a symbol of legitimacy, proof that cannot be faked or forged. She held it out to Arya. Arya stared at the ring, her heart pounding. This was it, the final piece, proof even the most skeptical council member couldn't deny. She took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stone blazed with light, not painful, but brilliant enough to make them all shield their eyes. Warmth spread up Arya's arm, through her chest, settling around her heart like a second pulse. When the light faded, the ring fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her hand specifically. Well, Vera said softly, I'd say that's fairly conclusive. News of the ring spread through the palace within hours. By morning, half of Silver Peak knew. By afternoon, the entire city was talking. The cursed girl wasn't just royal. She was the heir. The legitimate heir. The one the first Luna's own magic recognized. Council members who'd been on the fence suddenly found themselves very supportive. Families that had ignored Arya now sent gifts and requests for meetings. The political landscape shifted so fast it made Arya dizzy. They're afraid, Sienna observed during Arya's training session the next day, trying to get on your good side before the investigation finds them guilty. Will it? Arya blocked a strike and countered. Find them guilty? Some of them, definitely. Others probably knew nothing. The hard part will be figuring out who's who. Sienna disarmed Arya effortlessly. Again. And this time, don't telegraph your feint. Training had become routine now. Garrett in the mornings for combat, Sienna in the afternoons for everything else, evenings spent with Vera, learning history and politics, and all the things a royal heir should know. It was exhausting, but Arya found she didn't mind. For the first time in her life, she wasn't hiding, wasn't trying to be invisible. She was learning, growing, becoming something she'd never imagined possible. 2 weeks after the vault incident, Elder Mora called her to a private meeting. The old wolf sat in a study that smelled like old books and strong tea. She gestured for Arya to sit. The investigation has yielded results, Mora said without preamble. 4 council members have been found complicit in the conspiracy, Thorne and Wexford, obviously. Also council members Ashford and Drake. They've been arrested and will face trial. 4 out of 12, Arya said. That's a third of the council. It gets worse. We found financial records showing they've been embezzling from the royal treasury for decades. funneling money to maintain their power base. Moore's expression was grim. The corruption runs deep. What happens now? Now we clean house. The four will be tried publicly. If found guilty, and they will be, they'll be stripped of titles and exiled. Their families will lose their council seats. She paused. Which leaves us with a problem. What problem? We'll need to replace them. Find wolves capable of governing who aren't tied to the conspiracy. Mora's eyes were sharp. The council is proposing that you take one of the seats. As the royal heir, you have that right. Arya's mouth went dry. I don't know anything about governing. You knew enough to recognize a rigged trial and refuse to participate. You knew enough to show mercy when cruelty would have been easier. You knew enough to risk your life for the truth. Mora smiled slightly. That's more wisdom than half the current council possesses. I'd need help, advisors. You'd have them. Vera, certainly. Myself, if you want. The king has also offered his support. Arya thought about it. About the girl she'd been 6 weeks ago, invisible, voiceless, convinced she was cursed. About the girl she was now, wearing the first Luna's ring, standing in Elder Mora's study discussing political appointments. Yes, she said. I'll take the seat. Mora's smile widened. Good. We'll make the announcement tomorrow, along with the trial verdicts. The trials were public, held in the same arena where Arya had fought for her life. The crowd that came to watch was massive, packed into every available space, spilling out into the streets beyond. This wasn't entertainment. This was history. Thorne, Wexford, Ashford, and Drake stood in chains in the arena center. Above them, the council sat in judgment. Arya among them now, wearing simple robes that marked her as a council member, the first Luna's ring gleaming on her finger. The evidence was presented methodically. The journal, financial records, testimony from Helena's warriors, statements from servants who'd witnessed suspicious meetings. By the end, even the accused had stopped protesting their innocence. Grayson stood to deliver the verdict. The council finds the accused guilty of conspiracy, murder, and treason spanning 300 years. They are hereby stripped of all titles, lands, and privileges. They and their families are exiled from Silver Peak, never to return. This is the council's judgment. The crowd roared approval. Arya watched the four wolves being led away in chains and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no triumph. Just exhaustion and the knowledge that this was one battle won in a much longer war. After the trials, she found Daemon waiting outside the arena. How does it feel, he asked. Being a council member. Terrifying, she admitted. I have no idea what I'm doing. That makes you more qualified than most. He started walking, and she fell into step beside him. The council meets tomorrow to discuss replacements for the other seats. You'll want to be prepared. I know, Vera's been coaching me. Arya touched the ring absently. Daemon, why are you helping me? Really? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I told you the truth that first night. I became king by force, not by right. Every day I wonder if I'm just another usurper wearing a crown I don't deserve. But you have a legitimate claim. You're what this kingdom was supposed to have. You want me to take the throne? She said slowly. I want the kingdom to be ruled by someone with an actual right to rule. Whether that's you alone, or both of us sharing power, or... He shrugged. I don't know. But I know the current system is broken. The trials prove that. We need to build something better. Together, Arya said. If you'll have me. She thought about that. About the Alpha King who'd seen her mark and changed her entire life. Who'd protected her, trained her, helped her expose a 300-year conspiracy. Partners, she said. Not ruler and subject. Equals. Something in his expression softened. I'd like that. They walked back to the palace as the sun set over Silver Peak. Two wolves who'd both fought their way to power from nothing, now standing at the edge of remaking an entire kingdom. Arya had survived the trials, exposed the conspiracy, taken a council seat, worn the ring that proved her legitimacy beyond doubt. But the real work was just beginning, building a government that served the people instead of enriching the powerful, rooting out corruption that had festered for centuries, proving that someone from nowhere could lead. She touched her mark beneath her robes, then the ring on her finger. Cursed or blessed, Omega or royal, maybe she'd always been both. Maybe that's what made her the right person for this impossible task. The girl who was nothing had become something, and she wasn't finished yet. The assassination attempt came during the council's first reform session. Arya was mid-sentence, proposing new oversight for treasury allocations, when the window behind Grayson's seat exploded inward. Glass sprayed across the chamber. A figure in black dropped through, crossbow already aimed at her chest. Garrett moved faster than something his size should. He crashed into Arya, shoving her sideways as the bolt whistled past her ear and buried itself in the wall behind her seat. The assassin was already reloading when Sienna appeared from nowhere, knife flashing. The blade caught the assassin's wrist, and the crossbow clattered to the floor. A brief struggle. Then Sienna had the attacker pinned, one blade at their throat. "Don't," Sienna said calmly. "We need you alive." Guards flooded the chamber. The remaining council members, 8 now, with 4 seats still empty, sat frozen in shock. Daemon had his sword drawn, positioned between Arya and any other threats. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." Arya pushed herself up from where Garrett had knocked her down. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "I'm fine." The assassin struggled under Sienna's grip. "You can't stop this. There are others, more than you know. The old families won't let you destroy everything we built." "You built nothing," Arya cut him off. "You stole power through murder and called it legacy. That ends now." "Remove the prisoner for questioning," Grayson ordered, his face pale. "And someone secure that window." After the guards dragged the assassin away, the council sat in tense silence. "This is the 3rd attempt in 2 weeks, Elder Mora said quietly. "Poison in your food, the blade trap in your quarters. Now this. They're getting more desperate." "Good," Arya said. "Desperate people make mistakes. Desperate people also get lucky eventually." Daemon's voice was tight. "We need to end this. Find whoever's coordinating these attacks and cut off the head." "We've arrested dozens," Grayson said, questioned hundreds more. "But the conspiracy runs deeper than we thought. Some of these families have been hiding their involvement for generations." "Then we dig deeper." Arya stood, brushing glass from her robes. "We don't stop until every last one is exposed." "At what cost?" Councilmember Riversong, one of the newer appointments, a she-wolf who'd earned her seat through merit rather than birth, spoke up. "Half the city is in chaos. Noble families turning on each other. Accusations flying. How much more can we tear apart before there's nothing left to rebuild?" It was a fair question. Arya had been asking herself the same thing. "As much as it takes," she said finally, "because rebuilding on a foundation of lies and murder isn't rebuilding at all. It's just putting up new walls around the same rot." "The girl's right," Elder Mora said. "We either clean this completely, or we condemn future generations to fight the same battles." The session continued, but Arya's attention kept drifting to the broken window, to the bolt still embedded in the wall where her head had been moments earlier. 3 attempts. 3 times she'd survived through luck or a other's intervention. How long before her luck ran out? That night, she stood in the archives again, searching through records by candlelight. Sleep felt impossible with assassins around every corner. "You're going to exhaust yourself," Vera said from the doorway. "I'm going to find the source." Arya didn't look up from the ledger she was reading. "These attacks are coordinated. Someone's funding them, organizing them. There has to be a trail. And you think you'll find it in accounting records from 30 years ago? Maybe." Arya traced a line of numbers. "The 4 council members we exiled weren't working alone. They had allies who haven't been exposed yet, people with enough money and influence to hire assassins even after their masters are gone." Vera moved closer, examining the ledger. "What are you looking at?" "Payments, large sums moving between accounts with no clear purpose." Arya pointed to a series of entries. "Here, 50,000 marks transferred from an account registered to the Ashford family to something called the Northern Trust. Then the Northern Trust distributes smaller amounts to dozens of different recipients. A shell organization hiding the true destination of the funds." "Exactly. And look," Arya flipped to another page. Similar patterns from accounts tied to Thorne, Wexford, all of them. They were all paying into the same system. Can you trace where the money went from there? Not from these records, but Arya pulled out a different book, one Damon had secured from the royal treasury. The Northern Trust still exists. It's been operating for over a century, and according to this, it's currently controlled by... She stopped, staring at the name on the page. What? Vera looked over her shoulder, then inhaled sharply. That's impossible. Is it? Arya's voice was hollow. The name written in neat script was Council Member Marcus Grayson. Grayson, who'd overseen her trials, who'd voted to accept her as royal, who'd been leading the investigation into the conspiracy. Grayson, who'd been sitting right behind her when the assassin came through the window. He set it up, Arya said slowly, positioned himself as our ally while actually controlling everything from the shadows. He probably ordered the attack himself, knowing it would fail but make him look uninvolved. If this is true, it's true. Look at the dates. Arya pointed to the records. Every major payment coincides with an attack or political move against the monarchy. He's been the architect of this for decades. We need to tell Damon, Vera said, immediately. They found the king in his study, still awake despite the late hour. When Arya explained what she'd found, his expression went cold. Grayson, he said, I fought beside him during the border wars, trusted him with council leadership, which is exactly why he was perfect for this role. Arya spread the records across his desk. Nobody would suspect him. The respected war hero, the impartial council head. Meanwhile, he's been pulling strings the whole time. If we accuse him without proof solid enough to convict, he'll disappear. Damon studied the ledgers. We need more than financial records. We need him to confess or be caught in the act. So we give him the opportunity, Sienna said from her position by the door. Arya hadn't even heard her enter. Set a trap. Make him think he has a chance to finish what he started. Using Arya as bait, Damon said flatly. I'm already bait. Arya met his eyes. Every day I'm alive is a threat to them, so let's use that. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Arya would announce a public ceremony in the old palace ruins, the same place where they'd found the vault. She'd declare her intention to rebuild the structure as a monument to the true royal line, with the ceremony taking place at midnight when security would be minimal. It was an obvious trap. Blatantly obvious. But Grayson was desperate. And desperate people took obvious bait if they thought they had no other choice. You don't have to do this, Damon said the evening before the ceremony. They stood on the palace balcony, watching the sun set over the city. Yes, I do. Arya's hand rested on the pommel of her sword. A real one now, not a practice blade. If we don't end this, it never ends. There will always be another attack, another conspiracy, another 300 years of lies. If something goes wrong, then you make sure the truth still comes out. She looked at him. Promise me, if I don't survive this, you'll finish what we started. Arya said, Promise. His jaw tightened. I promise. But you're going to survive. We both are. I hope so. She turned back to the sunset. But hope isn't a plan. Midnight came cold and moonless. Arya stood in the ruins of the old palace, exactly where the announcement had specified. Torches burned at intervals, casting dancing shadows across broken walls and overgrown stones. The vault entrance was still visible, the door sealed again, but the mark of entry clear. She wore light armor under her formal robes, a sword at her hip, knives hidden in various places Sienna had insisted on. The first Luna's ring gleamed on her finger. Around the ruins, hidden in shadows and rubble, were Damon's most trusted warriors. Garrett somewhere to her left, Sienna to her right. Damon himself positioned where he could see the entire area. They waited. Minutes dragged past. An hour. Arya started wondering if Grayson had seen through the trap after all. Then she heard footsteps. Multiple people, approaching from different directions. Professional. Coordinated. Show yourself, Arya called out. Or are you afraid to face me directly? Grayson emerged from the darkness ahead of her, flanked by a dozen armed wolves. He looked tired, older than she'd realized, but his eyes were sharp and cold. I rather hoped you'd be smarter than this, he said. Coming here alone, advertising your location. It's almost insulting. I'm not alone, Arya said. Neither am I. Grayson gestured and more figures appeared from the ruins around them. 20, 30. Too many. Arya's heart sank. They'd underestimated how many people Grayson still controlled. You can't win this, Grayson continued. Even if you kill me tonight, there are others who'll continue the work. The conspiracy isn't a few corrupt council members. It's a belief system. The understanding that true power doesn't come from ancient bloodlines or magic rings. It comes from those strong and smart enough to take it. You murdered children in their beds, Arya said. Don't dress it up as philosophy. We eliminated a failing system. Grayson's voice was calm, almost reasonable. The monarchy was stagnant, weak. The first Luna united the packs, yes, but her descendants grew complacent. They forgot that power must be earned, not inherited. So you killed them and pretended the council was better? The council was better. For 300 years we maintained stability, prosperity, growth. He shook his head. Then you appeared, claiming rights you never earned, disrupting centuries of progress because of a mark on your skin. That mark represents a bloodline chosen to unite the packs, Arya said. Not through force, through balance, through understanding that leadership means serving the people, not controlling them. Noble words, but you're still just a girl from nowhere. Grayson drew his sword, and tonight, that ends. The attack came from all sides. Arya drew her blade as the first warrior reached her, meeting his strike with one of her own. Steel rang on steel. She ducked a second slash, kicked out at a third opponent's knee. Then Daemon's warriors emerged from hiding, and the ruins erupted into chaos. Garrett crashed into 3 opponents at once, his sword a blur. Sienna moved like smoke, her knives finding targets with lethal precision. Daemon cut through anyone who tried to reach Arya, his fighting style brutal and efficient. But Grayson's forces had numbers. For everyone they dropped, 2 more seemed to appear. Arya found herself back-to-back with Daemon, both of them surrounded. This wasn't the plan, he said, breathing hard. Plans change. Arya blocked a strike aimed at his back. We adapt. A warrior got past her guard, blade slashing across her ribs. Pain bloomed hot and sharp. Arya twisted away, drove her sword up under his guard, dropped him. More kept coming. Her arms were getting heavy. Her ribs screamed with every breath. This was going to end badly. Then horns sounded from the city. Grayson's head snapped toward the noise. What? Did you really think we'd come here without backup? Daemon smiled grimly. I sent word to every pack within 3 days' travel, told them what you'd done, what you were trying to do. Lights appeared on the roads leading to the ruins. Torches. Hundreds of them. The other packs had come. Wolves poured into the ruins, fresh fighters who weren't exhausted or wounded. They crashed into Grayson's forces like a wave, overwhelming them through sheer numbers. The battle turned in moments. Grayson's warriors threw down their weapons or fled into the darkness. Within minutes, it was over. Grayson himself stood alone, surrounded by swords, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. You can't do this, he said. I'm council head. I have rights. You had rights, Daemon said coldly. You forfeited them when you committed treason. Treason? Grayson laughed bitterly. I've served this kingdom for 40 years, led armies, made the hard decisions you were too weak to make. And you call it treason? You tried to murder me, Arya said. Multiple times. You orchestrated a conspiracy spanning 3 centuries. You killed children to maintain power. She stepped closer, the first Luna's ring catching torchlight. That's not service. That's evil dressed up in nobility. There is no good and evil in politics, Grayson spat. Only power, and those too weak to seize it. Then watch what the weak can do. Arya nodded to the warriors. They bound Grayson in chains, the same kind used for Thorn and the others. The council will hear the evidence against you, Arya said. Every ledger entry, every payment, every order you gave, and then you'll face the same justice you denied to my ancestors. Luther Grayson's expression twisted. You think this changes anything? I told you, there are others. This isn't over. It is for you. They led him away, still protesting, still threatening, but his voice faded into the distance, becoming just another echo in the ruins of a palace that had burned 300 years ago. Arya watched until he disappeared, then nearly collapsed. Daemon caught her. "Easy, you're hurt." "I'm fine." But blood was soaking through her robes where the blade had caught her. "It's not deep." "It's deep enough." He helped her sit on a piece of broken wall while healers rushed over. "You're also insane for doing this." "It worked." "Barely." His voice was rough with emotion. If the other packs hadn't arrived when they did. But they did. Arya looked at the warriors still securing the area. Wolves from a dozen different packs, all working together. "You called them. They came." "That's what unity looks like." The healers worked quickly, their magic knitting the wound. It still hurt, but the pain was manageable. Elder Mora appeared, picking her way through the rubble with impressive grace for someone her age. "Well," she said, "that was dramatic." "Did we get everyone?" Arya asked. "Grayson's top supporters, yes. There are probably minor conspirators still hiding, but without leadership, they're no real threat." Mora's eyes were sharp. "You cut off the head, the body will die." "How many people knew?" Arya's voice was quiet. "How many were complicit?" "More than we'd like. Fewer than we feared." Mora sat beside her. "That's how these things work. A core group orchestrating everything, surrounded by people who benefit enough to stay quiet but aren't truly involved. Now that the core is gone, most of the others will fade back into normal life. That doesn't seem fair." "It's not. But justice and fairness aren't always the same thing." Mora's smile was sad. "You'll learn that as you govern." The trials took place over the following week. Grayson faced the council, minus his own seat, now occupied by a wolf named Thornwick, who'd spent 20 years fighting corruption in the outer territories. The evidence was presented methodically. Financial records, testimony from captured conspirators, documents in Grayson's own handwriting ordering attacks. He didn't deny it, didn't try to defend himself, just sat in chains, staring at nothing. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, he finally spoke. "You think you've won," he said to Arya, "but you've just proven my point. Power doesn't come from bloodlines. It comes from strength. And you only have power now because you were stronger than me, that's all." "No," Arya said. "I have power because people chose to support me. The packs that came to fight, the council members who voted for justice, the citizens who demanded truth. That's not strength, that's leadership. And it's something you never understood." Grayson was exiled with the others, sent to the far territories where he'd never see Silver Peak again. After the trials, Arya stood before a full session of the council, now 12 members again, with 4 new wolves occupying the seats left empty by traitors. "We have a choice to make," she said. "We can restore the monarchy, with me as queen and Daemon as king, or we can rebuild the council system, making it stronger and more accountable. Or we can try something new, a balance between both." "What would that look like?" Riversong asked. "A dual system. The monarchy provides continuity and serves as a check on council power. The council provides representation and serves as a check on royal power, both working together, neither able to dominate." "That's never been tried before," Thornwick said. "Neither has exposing a 300-year conspiracy," Daemon said from his seat. "We're already in uncharted territory. Might as well chart it properly." The debate lasted hours. Arguments for and against, concerns about logistics, questions about implementation. Finally, Elder Mora called for a vote. "All in favor of establishing a balanced system with both monarchy and council sharing power?" Every hand rose, unanimous. Then it's settled. Mora looked at Arya and Daemon. "The kingdom will have both a ruling council and a royal pair, equal in authority, accountable to each other and to the people." The coronation was set for the next full moon. Arya spent the intervening weeks preparing, learning protocols, studying history, working with advisors to draft the new governing charter that would define how the dual system functioned. She also visited her old pack. The journey took 3 days by carriage. When they arrived at the pack house that had been her prison for 17 years, Arya barely recognized it. It looked smaller somehow, less intimidating. Alpha Marcus met her at the entrance, his face carefully neutral. "Lady Arya," he said, "we received word you were coming. Just Arya." She stepped past him into the house. "I'm not here as a council member. I'm here because I needed to see this place one more time." She walked through familiar corridors, seeing them with new eyes. The corner where she'd hidden during gatherings, the kitchens where she'd scrubbed floors, the room where she'd slept with 3 other Omegas. Celeste was there, in the main hall. She looked older, diminished somehow. When she saw Arya, genuine fear crossed her face. "I didn't know," Celeste said quickly. "About the mark being royal. I swear, I thought you were cursed like everyone said." "I know." Arya cut her off. "You were raised to believe it. We all were." "Are you here to punish us for how we treated you?" Arya considered that. Part of her, the part that still remembered every humiliation, every cruelty, wanted to say yes, to make them pay for 17 years of suffering. But another part, the part that had learned mercy in the arena, knew better. "No," she said finally. "I'm here to tell you that the curse was never real. That you wasted 17 years being afraid of a girl who just wanted to be accepted, and that I hope you'll do better in the future." She left without waiting for a response. Back at the carriage, Damon was waiting. "How was it?" "Smaller than I remembered." Arya climbed in, settling into her seat. "And sadder. They're so trapped in their fear and ignorance that they can't see past it. Does that make you angry?" "It makes me tired." She leaned back. "And it makes me determined never to let fear drive my decisions the way it drove theirs." The coronation took place in the rebuilt throne room, not in the old palace ruins, but in a new chamber constructed specifically for this purpose. A room that honored the past while looking toward the future. Thousands packed into the palace and the grounds beyond. Not just Silver Peak citizens, but wolves from every pack in the kingdom. They'd come to witness history. Arya stood before Elder Mora, wearing robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver. The First Luna's crown rested on a cushion beside her. Beside her, Damon wore matching robes in silver and black. "The crown has been empty for 300 years, Mora said, her voice carrying through the chamber. "Filled instead by corruption and conspiracy. But today we restore what was lost. Today we crown those who will lead us forward, not through force, but through wisdom and strength combined." She lifted the crown and placed it on Arya's head. The metal was cool and lighter than expected. "Arya Blackwood, last heir of the First Luna's bloodline, I crown you Queen of the Northern Kingdoms. May you rule with justice, mercy, and the courage to do what is right even when it is hard." Then she turned to Damon, lifting a second crown, simpler than Arya's, but no less significant. "Damon Silvercrest, Alpha King who has proven his strength and his wisdom, I crown you King of the Northern Kingdoms. May you rule with strength, honor, and the humility to remember that power is a responsibility, not a privilege." The crown settled. The room erupted in cheers. Arya looked out at the crowd. Wolves of every station, every pack, united in this moment. She saw Vera in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Garrett and Sienna standing at attention, pride clear in their eyes. Council members, both old and new, watching with expressions ranging from hope to cautious optimism. And beside her, Damon, equal, partner, friend. He met her eyes and smiled. They turned to face the crowd together. 300 years ago, Arya said, her voice magically amplified to reach every ear. My ancestors were murdered by wolves who believed power was something to be seized and hoarded. They were wrong. Power is something earned through service, through sacrifice, through the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when everyone tells you to stay down. She paused, touching the mark on her collarbone through her robes. I spent 17 years being called cursed, being told I was worthless, that the best thing I could do was disappear. Son se soit as siu. Her voice strengthened. But I'm standing here today not despite being that cursed girl from nowhere, but because of it. Because I learned that your worth isn't determined by what others call you. It's determined by what you choose to become. The crowd was silent, listening. We've built a new system, Damon continued. One where power is balanced, where no single person or group can dominate. It won't be perfect, we'll make mistakes, but we'll make them together, openly, and we'll fix them together. The crown I wear belonged to the first Luna, Arya said. She used it to unite 7 warring packs into one kingdom. Today, we recommit to that unity, not through force or fear, but through mutual respect and the understanding that we're stronger together than apart. She raised her voice. This kingdom belongs to all of you, nobles and commoners, strong and weak, those born to power and those who had to fight for every scrap. We all have a place here. We all have value. And together, we'll build something that lasts not 300 years, but forever. The cheers shook the palace foundations. That night, after the celebrations had died down and the crowds dispersed, Arya stood alone in her chambers. The crown sat on a table by the window, catching moonlight. A knock on the door. Vera entered without waiting for permission. You should be celebrating, the old wolf said. I am, in my own way. Arya touched the crown gently. Is this real? Sometimes I think I'll wake up back in the pack house, and all of this will have been a dream. It's real. Vera joined her at the window. You earned it, every impossible moment of it. I had help, a lot of help. The best leaders always do. Vera smiled. Your ancestor Celine wrote something in her journal, near the beginning. Do you remember what it was? Arya thought back to the vault, to reading those words by torchlight. She said the council doubted her, thought she was too young, too soft. And what else? That they'd learn otherwise. Arya's smile was tired. I guess she was right about that. She was right about a lot of things, including sending her daughter away to survive. Vera's expression grew serious. That child grew up in hiding, never knowing she was royal. She lived as a commoner, married a common wolf, had children who knew nothing of their heritage. For 300 years, your bloodline survived because it stayed hidden, stayed humble, stayed connected to the people instead of elevated above them. You're saying being cursed was actually a blessing. I'm saying that maybe the curse and the blessing were always the same thing. That being forced to survive from nothing made you someone who could lead from everything. Vera put a hand on Arya's shoulder. The first Luna chose her bloodline to unite the packs. Not because you're special, but because you're not. Because you understand what it means to be powerless. That makes you the perfect person to wield power. Arya was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm scared I'll fail them. Good. Fear keeps you honest. Vera squeezed her shoulder. But remember, you're not doing this alone. You have Daemon, the council, advisors, and you have something the old monarchy never had. What's that? A kingdom that chose you instead of being forced to accept you. That makes all the difference. After Vera left, Arya returned to the window. The city spread below her, thousands of lives intersecting and connecting. Her responsibility now. Her people. The cursed girl from nowhere had become a queen. She thought about that girl, small, frightened, convinced she was worthless. Part of her would always be that girl, would always remember what it felt like to be invisible and powerless. But that was okay. That was good even, because that girl knew exactly what was at stake when leaders failed. What happened when power became more important than people. And she'd make sure it never happened again. Arya picked up the crown and carried it to the mirror, placed it on her head, looked at the reflection of a 17-year-old girl wearing the weight of a kingdom. Behind her reflection, she could almost see them, all the ancestors who'd fought and died and survived in secret so she could stand here. Celine, sending her daughter away with her last breath. Alara, growing up not knowing she was royal. Generations of wolves who'd passed down a mark they didn't understand but protected anyway. And her mother, who died bringing Arya into the world. Who'd never known what her daughter would become. I'll make you proud, Arya whispered to all of them. I promise. The crown settled on her head like it had always belonged there. Maybe it had. Maybe cursed and blessed were just 2 words for the same truth. That survival shapes you into exactly who you need to be, even when you can't see it happening. That the hardest trials create the strongest leaders. That being broken doesn't make you weak. It makes you understand what it takes to rebuild. Arya Blackwood had spent 17 years surviving. Now she'd spend the rest of her life making sure others didn't just survive, but thrive. The girl from nowhere had become everything the world needed, and her story, the real one, not the lies people told to keep her powerless, was only just beginning. Outside, the city slept under her protection. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new threats, new opportunities to fail or succeed, but tonight, Arya stood in her chambers wearing a crown earned through blood and trials, and the stubborn refusal to stay down when the world told her she belonged in the dirt. She touched her mark one last time, then the ring on her finger. Cursed or royal, Omega or Queen, shadow or light. She was all of it. She'd always been all of it, and that was exactly what made her the right person to lead. The crown might be ancient, but the kingdom it represented was being born fresh tonight, built on truth instead of lies, on partnership instead of domination, on the understanding that real power comes not from taking it, but from earning the right to serve. Arya Blackwood had survived her story. Now she'd write a new one, for herself, for her kingdom, for every cursed girl who'd ever been told she was worthless. And it would be a story worth telling for the next 300 years.